The ideal film that we all want to make is something that is well written and perfectly executed.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean it needs to be expensive. It's just that you're considering what you have available to you.
Chuck, pitch me the log line for your next film.
You got it. A broke socialite is offered to have her family fortune restored by a mysterious benefactor in exchange for her identity and persona online. Will she choose fame or will she choose fortune?
Okay, I'm intrigued. Where does it take place?
In a mansion in Beverly Hills.
Okay, what's your budget?
$25,000.
And is that location free?
No. Actually, do you know someone who can give me a mansion?
I think first we should start with chatting about whether this idea is a filmable one or a good one. Welcome to Indie Film Podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I am Chuck. Welcome to our 3-part series about conceptual mistakes of indie filmmaking. This is part 2, writing a script that your budget or your skills cannot cash.
And to start out, we've created sort of a 2x2 chart, if you will, that can help you sort your film. So along the top, we have a good script and a bad script. 2 very important foundational things for your movie.
You have a good one.
Hopefully. And then along the side, we have 2 options as well. Was it well executed or did you kind of beef it on the filming part?
Yeah, and those are things that we got to take into mind as filmmakers when we sit down to write the script. Is this something that we can actually do?
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of times I'll read scripts from an aspiring indie filmmaker or just a writer that's interested in film, and I'll read it and I'll say something like, oh, well, how are you going to do this car chase?
Yeah. Car chases are my favorite when I read those in scripts. I'm like, this is so action-packed. This is so much fun, especially when they're describing the vehicles as these top-of-the-line nice cars that are just careening through a downtown, a fully populated downtown.
And anybody who has experience in doing film work or videography work or commercial work, the first thing that comes to mind is that's expensive.
Yeah.
And maybe impossible based on what we have available to us. So again, we're looking at the breakdown, good script versus bad script, and then whether or not that idea is executable or not within your skill set. So we kind of
skill set and budget.
Yes, and so we broke this down. So some famous examples, and I want to bring up one of my favorite, which is Troll 2.
Okay.
I love laughing at that film, and that is an example of a really bad script that was poorly executed.
Yes.
Although entertaining.
Still entertaining. You know, you can almost always find something good about any film out there. If nothing else, then it's funny to laugh at.
Yeah.
Birdemic falls into this as well.
Yeah, Birdemic, The Room, classic indie films that were just, oh, wow, that was a really bad idea. And they couldn't do it at all.
They couldn't do it either.
Yeah, which The Room is a great example of something that should be doable, but somehow
was not.
Yeah, just didn't happen. So do you have some examples of some bad scripts or bad ideas that were well executed, where they do have the skill set or they do have the budget, but unfortunately the idea is just horrible?
Yeah, I think we can put the entire Transformers series in here. I feel pretty confident about that one. Armageddon, Pearl Harbor.
Good. Michael Bay.
Yeah.
He's a shining example of somebody that has a lot of technical skills, but then produces some movies that are definitely in the this is not a good script realm.
Could have started with a stronger script. Though, to be fair, Michael Bay also knows exactly what he's doing and makes great money doing it. So, you know, good for him.
Yeah. So some people are going to appreciate that.
Yes,
they will. They're going to appreciate it just because of the technical aspects, the special effects, the battle scenes.
I do not look forward every summer to a new Fast and Furious movie because I'm ecstatic about the winding, intricate plot or the moral dilemmas involved.
Yeah.
I'm just there to watch people drive really pretty cars in really stupid ways, sometimes even in space.
Nice.
Because why not?
Yeah, it's something that pulls us.
It does. Yeah. It does. Okay, so then...
those are all... So there's so many good examples of movies that just terrible idea, and then they have the budget and the execution behind it to like make it look cool, make it have some types of emotional beats, something interesting. But those are the ones that are basically Hollywood slop.
Yes.
Unfortunately. And there's a lot of indie films that fall into that bad script, but they're well executed because they do write the script within the means. But then those are the ones that are just snooze fests.
Usually.
Unfortunately.
But the cinematography is usually gorgeous, and you have the cinematographers with the ability to dive in and do something creative and interesting with some of those shot choices. You typically have some really, really solid performances from actors you've never heard of.
Oh, yeah, for
which
sure.
is always kind of cool
Yeah,
to get to
yeah.
see these, diamond in the rough sort of people,
Yeah, but it's
That's
easy
fun.
as indie filmmakers to get lost in the execution of something and forget that you need to have the story beats.
The story does need to be good.
Yeah.
The story needs to be good.
And the category that we had a hard time finding examples of was a film that has a good script, but it is poorly executed.
Yes.
Because usually if you have a compelling enough story, a lot of times the audience will forgive your lack of technical skills.
Not to mention the fact that a really good script and story is going to take into account some of those limitations, either they be budget, skill set, access, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's important to consider too.
Yeah, if you're a good writer, you're figuring
that
this
in
out. You're being creative not just with lighting and not just with sound design and not just with actors' performances. You're thinking, okay, what locations do I have available?
Yes. And I will say that I'm hoping that we don't get completely slammed for the two examples that we have for this.
Yeah.
The two best examples that I could personally think of based on movies I've actually seen
Yeah.
for a great script but poor execution were Saw, the original from 2004.
Yeah, which if you watch it now, and if you're a filmmaker, you're thinking, wow, okay, well, the lighting isn't super dramatic.
Yeah. If you look at that main room sequence where the big climax or whatever happens, the lighting in there is actually not great. It's pretty rough. And you could lean into the fact that it was supposed to be the, luminescent or fluorescent lighting. And you even see the fluorescent lights hanging there. And I'm like, yes, but it was literally in a studio they built. Like they had full access to that. They could have controlled for that, and they could have just changed the lights that were hanging and given us something a little bit more dramatic, Green Mile style. But they did not.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It doesn't make the movie bad because the story was so interesting and so good. But they even have like some night mode shots. They have a lot of really weird editing choices in there. Like technically speaking, that movie as a whole was not going to be a candidate for any cinematography awards, editing, any technical awards. Though the audio was good and not distracting, which is also important. If you got a really good script and you're not going to execute it well, at least execute the sound well.
I have some of my own examples that I can share that definitely fit that category of, this was a decent idea that we had, but we just did not have the skills to cash that scripts check that we wrote. So we can get into that. What's the other example that you had besides
the other one is Clerks. And I know that's terrible and awful to say because Clerks is so heavily lauded as a fantastic indie film, and it is a great film, and I do love it. But I think even Kevin Smith would look back and be like, yeah, I've learned a lot more about camera direction and things that I would have changed for overall gaffing, setup, art department, things like that, that I would change and do differently now. But he did what he could with what he had at the time and made it work. And it was a great movie. And I do think that this category is also proof that the story is so much more important than a lot of the technical aspects. People love to get hung up on how fancy is your camera, how pretty are your lenses, when really... Well, if your story's boring as all get out, nobody cares how pretty your lenses were.
That's such a good point. The effort that you need to put in to become good at coming up with stories is high.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of practice writing, which is a lot less glamorous than doing the thing where you're hanging out with people and getting all the lights set up and an expensive camera gear where people look at you and they're impressed, and the actors can't wait to see the film that
all looks,
the film that you captured and the footage that you captured, and yes, it's much less glamorous, but those people that are good at it, that's why it's a more valuable skill set.
Yeah, it is.
It's so much more valuable, I think. So obviously, then the ideal film that we all want to make is something that is well written and perfectly executed.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean it needs to be expensive. It's just that you're considering what you have available to you.
Yeah, and I would say that a lot of those films are inherently big budget, big studio films because they do have the resources and the access.
Yeah, those are the movies that we get exposed to when we're younger that make us fall in love with movies, most of us. And then when we get a little bit older, we start to see some of the more niche movies. Although I do want to point out the film Obsession by Curry Barker that I thought was incredible. And he did a great job of working within his budget, which, $750,000. We would all love to have that much money.
$750,000 just handed to you to make your movie. Yeah, indie filmmakers would know how to make that work real well.
Most of us will, but the idea behind it, I think, is also important.
It was.
And if you go, I've mentioned this before, if you go to Curry Barker's YouTube channel, it's kind of amazing to sort it by oldest first.
Yeah.
He's just got his entire history of filmmaking out in the open on the internet. And to me, that's really aspiring.
Because he's the people's filmmaker. We have watched him grow up.
Yeah.
As YouTube has come of age, so has he.
Yeah.
And now we have watched you flower into this beautiful filmmaker, and we're all so proud of you.
Yeah, we're excited for the next film.
Yeah.
Because it was very well done. But it just goes to show how important it is, regardless of where you sit on how good is this script, how well can I execute it, simplifying as much as you possibly can to just do the damn thing.
Yeah.
Get out there.
Just doing
record, because you don't know if it's going to be bad until it's done sometimes.
A lot of time... Okay, maybe it's 50-50.
You think it's going to be good sometimes. You always think it's going to be good.
Hopefully, you always think it's going to be good.
Then you get on set and things start to fall apart and you're wondering, oh boy, is this going to be good? And then you doubt yourself till you get to the editing room, and that's when it really starts to sink in, where you have no clue if it's good or bad for most of us. And then you send it out to people.
and they will rush to assure you it's bad.
Oh, well, you got good friends. Most of the time, people just smile and nod.
Smile and nod. Smile and nod.
Nobody watches it.
No.
So within the realm of keeping things feasible, we actually have a cheap trick.
Yes, from our featured filmmaker, Lauren Castor.
Yeah, and her suggestion for filmmakers out there this week is to use locations as thoroughly as possible, such as using one location as multiple locations, which we recently had Jack Judson on.
Yeah.
And he explained that his house was two houses.
Yeah, because we had the upstairs for one character's house and the downstairs for a different character's house. And that worked great, because technically then we used the exterior for a completely different house.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was the front yard versus the backyard, so we could.
Yeah. Whatever locations you have access to, try to make it as diverse as possible.
Yeah.
Do the sitcom establishing shot if that's the only thing that you can do.
If that's it, make it work.
It's not the most exciting way to establish something, but hey, in the 90s it worked, and that's what I grew up watching. So,
and also a good establishing shot can go a long way for even justifying sound if you have construction noise issues on your set, as you've mentioned before, Chuck. If you have an establishing shot that shows some of that construction happening, or a really annoying lawnmower sound that just won't go away while you're filming, include it in your establishing shot, and suddenly it's explained and nobody's going to care or mind that sound is there.
It helps if it makes sense with the story. But if you're making a short film and this is one of your, first things that you're doing, or you just are completely locked into a location
and a schedule, and your budget won't permit changes, because sometimes it won't.
Yeah, and you got all sorts of noise happening. If you can somehow visually represent that, and then tell your actors to project.
Yeah.
Because it's okay. Film actors out there, good Lord.
They whisper.
They do. And
they don't use their diaphragm.
Well, no, all it takes is like one to start talking quieter, and it's like contagious.
And then it spreads.
Because that's how they feed off of each other. I don't know what the deal is with you actors and your volume. You can't contrast against each other for some reason.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We'll never be able to explain it to you. I'm owning it. I know I do it.
Yeah.
I know. I hate it, because you throw me on a stage and...
I've recorded you before, and I'm like, I can barely hear you over the hum of the fan that's keeping the camera cool.
Okay, well, if you
and we're
would
shooting
like...
on a 125 millimeter lens, and I'm standing right next to you, and the camera's across the room.
So if you would like to hear more about Chuck ripping into my projection abilities as an actor, make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now. And on the subject of a cheap trick, if you'd like some help with keeping your budget in check through a budget template that we use on all of our shoots, or our income expense tracker that we also use for all of our podcast business expenses, you can subscribe to our newsletter and learn a little bit more about it and get access to those same spreadsheets for free.
Yeah. So. IndieFilmPodcast.com is where they can find the newsletter. I'll also put the link in the description in the video here. So do you want to talk about knowing your limitations?
I think my limitation is speaking loudly.
Yeah, you do okay on the podcast, but that's because I'm loud and obnoxious, and so you're just matching that energy.
I just want to be heard.
Yeah. You got to speak up if that's the case. When you're around me, at least. So do you want to talk about knowing your limitations as far as like filmmaking and script writing and some examples that you have there? Maybe some successes, but it's always fun to start with it's fun to start with the failures.
Start with the failures.
Let's pick at those scabs a little bit. Let's keep
there's so many.
Those wounds fresh.
Yeah.
If you don't keep them fresh, you forget that they were wounds, and then you make the same mistake.
You make the same mistake. You need that scar haunting you every time you look in the mirror. That's how you grow and change.
Yeah.
No. I think my worst failure, which is saying a lot because there have been many.
Okay.
But I think my worst failure was a short film called Headshot for a 48-hour film festival here locally.
Nice. You showed me clips of that film.
Yes.
That was definitely rough.
It is. Funny enough, one of the guys who played one of the detectives in that is actually doing well on the Law and Order circuit in New York now. So his acting career did continue past this terrible, terrible movie. So at least there's that.
And you springboarded him, I'm sure.
Obviously.
Nice work.
Or I told him in experience, not so much as words, but gave him the information he needed to know to move out of Idaho if he wants to pursue acting.
Yeah, there it is. You taught him not to work for free.
Don't work for free.
Not only does it not pay on set, but it also doesn't pay in footage for your demo reel.
It did not.
It did not. Lost time. Anyway, so you wrote a film about assassins.
It's two assassins that are getting these jobs for hits, and we've got the two detectives, and we've got, the crime scene investigative team and the different attorneys, and then there's all these people trying to just solve and figure out like who's killing all these people and why is it I don't even remember why it's happening, and I can't bring myself to watch the whole thing and try to get a glimmer of a plot because I don't think it's there. And the whole thing is set around what I had access to, which in 2010 was my college campus. Nice. So, just a lot of
people getting murdered in the gym.
Yeah. Or on the quad or, in a sorted classroom.
Yeah. So bad script, poorly executed.
Poor execution. And all around terrible.
Yeah. Funny.
Entertaining now.
Yeah, to watch.
But awfully depressing in the moment.
Yeah, bummer. See, my brother and I, when we started first making films, I kind of pushed for some sci-fi stuff early on, which was not ideal. You don't want to just make a sci-fi movie where you have gadgets and strange things happening.
Not unless all of your friends are into cosplay.
Yeah, that does help. There we go.
That helps.
Get into, what is that, LARPing?
Yeah.
Live action role play?
Man, they do some crazy stuff with foam and little LED lights, though.
Yeah, not that we have time to be able to do that stuff when we're filming, or budget. Like, we got to spend our money on equipment that ends up sitting on the shelf that we use once every 6 months because we need a super expensive. Anyway, speaking of which, we didn't have a Dolly system on one of the sci-fi films that we made, and the idea was that this AI device was spouting information into people and making them do bad things.
Okay.
Simple concept, actually, because we just wanted to have somebody break into a house and then get caught breaking in, which we were learning early on what is interesting and instantly dramatic.
And those are pretty high stakes, breaking into somebody's house and potentially getting caught. That's just inherently stressful.
Yeah, for sure. But, the problem is I was the lead character, so the acting was real rough. We had all of our friends.
But did you project?
I was loud. because we were using the on-camera microphone.
Yes.
Yeah, and it heard me. It was fine.
Okay. All right. So you kept it simple.
Yeah, but we had, we didn't have a Dolly system, and so we wanted to get a moving shot of people walking with these devices in their ears, and we ended up using a cable, which is like a piece of rope that we had a couple of boards, and we thought it was going to be heavy enough to hold like just a wheel that was spinning and rolling the camera over this cable.
Okay.
Yeah, but it just was really janky. So we had two people trying to hold it taut enough.
Well, the third person rolls the camera.
While the cameraman rolls the camera, and it just did not work at all. It was really bumpy and super shaky, and it might as well have been handheld.
But man, A+ for creative workarounds on that one.
We did our best.
I'm impressed.
But it's one of those things where we probably should have tried it a little bit more ahead of time.
Maybe.
But this was for a 48-hour film competition.
Yeah, so
good way to get your feet wet when you're doing this stuff, and it's like it really doesn't matter. And that's one of those things. If you go to the Lower Gentry Studios YouTube channel and you sort by oldest,
you can start
newest,
seeing some of those older projects.
Yeah. Yep. It's fun to look back at some of those and be like, oh, okay, I was really bad at this early on.
That is fair. Hopefully that when looking back on your past projects and your past failures, while you are cringing that you did it in the first place, hopefully you're also smiling a little bit and realizing you would never do those things again now. So at least there's growth.
Yeah.
That's good. Growth is good.
It's necessary to get those reps in.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that what turned the page for me, and then the filmmakers that I work with, which we've all worked together here in this small community.
Yes.
But my brother and I and sister-in-law produced quite a few films, and then we got cinematographer Danny Clamorous on board to run the camera.
Yeah.
And he was excited to develop his skills, and so we did one short film a month, which I think I've talked about before on the podcast. But for, I think in 2021 through to 2022, we did one short film a month that we posted directly to YouTube.
Yep.
Didn't wait around to submit to film festivals because that takes so long.
Oh yeah.
And for a short film, you're sitting on that thing for a year and a half minimum with filming and post-production and waiting to hear back from all these film festivals. So we said, we're just throwing it on the internet. We're going to get our reps in.
Yeah.
And the fun thing about that series is we did the same shot twice.
At the beginning.
Yeah, the first episode and the last episode. And this is an anthology series, so the characters kind of know each other, but there's no real story arc through the whole thing.
No.
But the characters are interconnected. So we brought it back to the same two characters that were on the first episode, and then we just did the same shot.
Yeah.
And you can tell the skill difference.
And how much you'd all grown in general.
Just in that one.
And just in 1 year's time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a relatively short period of time for substantial skill set growth.
But
yes, a year feels like forever, but
12 short films
that's
is the thing.
A lot.
And it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you give yourself those limitations and say, we're going to do this, and I know I've talked about the fact that we had one short film that was no actors.
Yeah.
On set.
Yeah.
It was just my brother and I and Danny.
Yep.
And we did what we needed to do to make this turn into a film, and then got everybody's audio. I got them to record their lines in the studio. And it was basically a voice message while this woman is, maybe drinking herself to death. So we came up with a creative idea there. But it was fun. It really pushed our creativity. And then when we went on to shoot the next feature film, it was like, oh, now we know how to do this.
Now we're feeling a little bit more prepared. We're ready. Yeah. We know what works well. We know what plays well, how certain camera movements add different tension or calm things down.
Yeah.
What sort of lighting works really well and what we're really into, what doesn't.
And most of these settings were just a couple people talking. The series is called Chit Chat.
Yeah.
And it's about people that don't say what they actually mean.
Which tracks.
Yeah. So
that's just human interaction.
Yeah, for sure. Right? All the time. But it was good to learn those skill sets. And then from there on, it at least gave us the baseline of, well, we can make something with two people talking.
Yeah.
At a table. Figure out a way to hopefully make it interesting.
But you officially learned what makes a compelling script, what makes an interesting script, what takes your script from that bad to good, like that dividing line.
Yeah.
And you also learned how to traverse from poorly executed to now this looks and feels like a movie.
Yeah.
So you went from one quadrant of our matrix all the way across the board. That's impressive.
It was well, the thing is we had been working on the writing for a while.
And to be fair, I don't know if there are any of them that are really, really bad that Lower Gentry has done. Like, yeah, some of the scripts are a little overstuffed from the early days. But, I mean, I've still written worse.
Oh. I don't know. That feature film Brown Truck is a snoozer. But it just is the way it is. Do you have some examples of some of the things that you've come up with that you feel very strongly about?
As far as, like, getting better?
Yeah.
I think every musical I've directed for community theater, for sure.
Yeah, there we go.
Big. No, actually, one I am proud of a couple of my older projects mainly because they showed growth.
Yeah.
And I thought that was important. But they also showed just a commitment to doing the damn thing.
Yeah.
But then I think Dive is probably the best example I've got of a film that I wrote simply. It's two people and a bartender with no lines sitting there having a conversation while a series of text messages actually informs the tension of the story.
Yeah.
So it was one location, very simple to shoot, and really let the actors' performances shine, and the dialogue just had to be sort of believable and kind of entertaining because that wasn't really where the plot was.
Yeah, the plot was
so that helped.
Invisible or through the visually represented to the audience via a series of text messages where the people that were having the conversation had really no clue what was about to happen.
No, and that worked so well for me because I don't consider myself really to be a writer. So that worked really well for me because it didn't mean that the writing had to be perfect and it had to be this windy, intricate plot where everything comes back into itself and folds in over itself or anything. It just had to be relatively believable dialogue. And that was something I knew I wanted to brush up on, and I wanted to work on it, and I knew I had access to this one location, and that was it.
There it is. And that one ended up getting into 70-some%.
No, it had a 78% acceptance rate on Film Freeway.
On Film Freeway, which very solid.
Yeah.
Super small as far as locations, obviously. Just one.
Yeah.
One location, 3 performers on camera.
Though technically we also made our gaffer go stand in as an actor too. So
oh, true. Yeah. He was driving the car. But you don't need to make something crazy complicated.
No.
And I feel like it's important to get the simple things right because that's something that we all can do as filmmakers is figure out how to shoot 2 people having a conversation and do it in an interesting way.
Yeah. Because that's not as easy to master as it sounds. It's really difficult to do.
But it can be compelling, and that's what Kevin Smith has showed us. Richard Linklater.
Yeah.
These are people that, it's focus on the simple thing and then let the story develop around that. Because that's something we can afford to do.
Yeah, which is nice because we're not getting independently wealthy off of indie filmmaking.
Not yet.
Yet.
Yeah.
I do need to keep the yet on the end of that.
There it is. But,
there it is.
There's always that really tiny chance. Oh, you just reminded me I need to buy a lottery ticket.
Oh, right.
Cover all my bases.
Pay that tax. Okay, so growing, learning, and just doing the thing.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to learning that difference between a good and a bad script and a filmable and a not filmable idea or script.
Yeah.
What are your biggest takeaways or like biggest regret or biggest learning curve? What hit you there?
I think having worked with my brother, it was really fortunate because he's a writer.
Yeah.
He got a Bachelor in Fine Arts in creative writing, and he was always very adamant about writing.
Yeah.
All the time and having ideas.
Which is good.
And that way, when we did our one feature film a month for 12 months and something popped up, like we had somebody that ended up in a cast and so we had to shoot something with one actor and have them on the phone. And it was like, oh, my brother has an idea of something that we can film. where it's just one actor talking on the phone, because he takes the time to sit and write every single day for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And get so many words down on paper. Even if he doesn't use them, it doesn't matter. He's building up that kitty. And I feel like if you give your idea too much value as a filmmaker and you're afraid to let it go, then that's going to hinder your creativity.
Yeah. The minute you get locked into this is the exact way this story has to be told, you're just limiting yourself and your possibilities.
Yeah. So that was a valuable lesson for me to learn, where it's seeing things that just, kill your darlings. It's not hard, but you don't have to kill them. You just have to have a mosaic of options to choose from. And when you see the pieces fit together, you put it into a film. You make a short film out of it. But you have to have those ideas. Yeah. You can't be stubbornly sitting with a script that you're trying to get produced and rehashing it and rehashing it and rehashing it. Dump it. Work on something else. Come back to it.
It won't go anywhere.
Keep brainstorming is the main thing.
Yeah.
Keep
the
brainstorming.
ideas going and don't be afraid to jump back to it. Even if it's not the right time right now, you can go back to it.
Yeah.
Because you never know what ideas or experiences will happen to you or come to you, however you want to phrase that. That was almost a sentence. In the future, whatever you do can drastically influence how you view or see an idea from, 1 year ago or 10 years ago. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And you can always pick that back up through an entirely new lens that life experience has granted you. And that could, change how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. And if you have a plethora of ideas that are filmable that you can execute, you might be surprised that the thing that you thought wasn't that good, people love it.
Yeah. You never know what people are going to love, especially if it is a good story and you execute it well.
Yeah.
Or if it's a really bad story and you execute it really poorly, you never know. People might still love it.
Love those movies.
Yeah, people may still love it.
But it's, I think I love it the most. I guess I should just kind of redact one of my statements. Like, if you are overly committed to something, sometimes those are the most beautiful films that happen. Like when the writer director is so bad and so committed at executing what they want to execute, their vision, like you have your Ed Woods, and
it's gonna be exactly what they imagine it as.
Yeah. And that lack of self-awareness is what makes those true pieces of art.
Oh, yeah.
True exhibits.
They are unforgettable.
The insanity of humanity.
They are unforgettable. Whether you wish you could forget them or not.
Yeah.
They stick with you.
Well,
so, hey, isn't that the famous quote? If you can't be famous, might as well be infamous.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so it's just along those lines.
I think it's all the same thing in today's internet-based world. There's no such thing as infamy. There's only people know you, people don't, and how much money that's worth. So
that's so depressing.
It really is, and I'm sorry for that bit of news. Should we should we hear from our featured filmmaker of the week?
Yeah, actually, I would love that.
Okay, she sent us a voicemail, which is really cool, and this is from Lauren Castor, and I think she introduces herself. But here we go.
I spent over a decade as an actor waiting for someone else to give me permission to do the work I wanted to do. Eventually, I realized I could create the opportunity myself. Rhythm as a Dancer is my debut feature as a writer-director, and I also produced and starred in it. The story was inspired by my own experience growing up with a lesbian mom and an anonymous sperm donor, and eventually meeting my biological father in my 20s. I took something incredibly personal and turned it into a fictional comedy drama about identity, family, and all the weird ways we figure out who we are. Making my first feature was so wild. We independently financed the film, shot it in 18 days, and I was basically in every frame. Made it without a studio, without a distributor, no industry machine behind us. We cold submitted to festivals, world premiered at Austin Film Festival, went to AFM ourselves to learn about distribution and find the right home for the film. And this summer, it had sold out theatrical screenings in LA and New York City. And as of August 4th, the film is actually out in the world. It's on Apple TV and Amazon Prime Video, which is still so surreal. I think what I'm most proud of is how much I had to learn along the way. Financing, producing, directing while acting, post, festivals, sales, distribution, theatrical. and now marketing the movie. I mean, there was no roadmap. I just kept figuring out the next thing. I'd love to be Filmmaker of the Week because I'm still very much in it. I don't have the story of someone who has made it and can neatly explain how it all works. But I do have the story of someone who made her first feature, got it out in the world, and is still learning, hustling, and trying to get people to discover it. And honestly, I think that's what indie filmmaking actually looks like.
So Lauren Castor's kind of my hero now.
That was a great voicemail that we got from her.
Yeah.
Way to go.
And I do think that's what indie filmmaking looks like. It doesn't look like, yes, it can look like Curry Barker, fine, but it doesn't for most people. It looks like being in it, finding a way to make this sustainable, and living your life doing the passionate things that actually feed your soul while also keeping a roof over your head. And it doesn't look like Hollywood, and it doesn't look glamorous, and it's not all red carpets and champagne or whatever. You know, it's the hard day-to-day work, but doing it with people you like.
The narcissist in me just hates the idea that you just fed all of our listeners. No, I'm just kidding. It is about the red carpet. You know what filmmaking is about? It's about me and my silly hats. No.
Monty Python made that work, so here we are.
No, that was really inspiring. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for sending that in, Lauren. If you are interested in being featured as a filmmaker, you can go to indiefilmpodcast.com/submit. We also offer film reviews, which we post to our website, and even to some of them to our YouTube channel, so you can check out those options there.
And I think as a quick recap, we hope all of you today take away from this that a very good script is always important.
Yeah.
But a very filmable idea is what's going to make or break your movie.
Yeah, and that's gonna help you get better. Is making sure that you're extending that skill set, and then keep practicing. Keep practicing.
Put in the reps.
Yeah.
And don't stop doing it.
Yeah, just keep going over and over and over and over again, because this is not glamorous, as we just learned. You just fight tooth and nail every single day.
Every day.
To keep making more content and getting eyes on it.
And that's why we do it, because we love it. Because otherwise, there's no rational reason to choose this career path. Yay, indie filmmaking.
There we go. With that, shall we succinctly say farewell?
I think so.
Bye.
Bye.